on to your program Democracy on the Road of Law. Barrister Obiorama, so let's look at the issue of concerning the challenges with the enforcement of the Ecowas judgment. So we know that the Ecowas judgment is a foreign judgment, it's not a Nigerian court, right? So how do member states, enforce the judgment given by this court in their respective state? Because obviously I don't think the ECOWAS itself has an enforcement mechanism in member states.
Yes, the Community Court of Justice of ECOWAS Court. The ECOWAS Court is a court that member states subscribe to, established, and the court has been doing very well. Doing very well in the context of, looking at issues that, happen in countries that have subscribed to that court. For example, Nigeria. That court is in Nigeria, it sits in Abuja. Now, if there is an infraction on the rights of an individual or groups of individuals, and there is a provision in the African Charter and other international instruments, then the aggrieved party can approach that court for remedy. And that court, because it's ECOWAS court, is not bound to look at Nigerian law or Nigerian constitution. No. It will look at treaties, laws, instruments which Nigerians are signatory to that is enforceable and applicable to the ECOWAS court. I recall the case of one young man, I can't recall his exact name now, that was arrested in Lagos near the former toll gate by one man who claimed to be a policeman, not in uniform. He took him to Ketu police station, dropped him there, and left. And for more than 12 years, the man was incarcerated at Kirikiri without trial. Nothing. It was the ECOWAS courts that came to his rescue after about 14 years. They want that to apply for his enforcement of fundamental rights under the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. And the court came up with the fact that yes, this man had undergone detentions that are arbitrary, illegal, unjustified. And the court ordered his release, and eventually he was released. And of course, the Twitter case, which we mentioned earlier, when the government banned Twitter, and people approached that court. And then, you see, but the challenge of the ECOWAS court is that there is no existing mechanism for enforcement of the judgments of that court. When I say mechanism, in Nigeria, we have different courts in various states, and there are sheriffs and bailiffs that enforce court orders, and there are judgment enforcement rules that apply. But in ECOWAS courts, they depend on the willingness of the country in issue to comply with the judgment, or persuasion, as the case may be. But then, that is where I think something needs to be done, and done urgently. And what is to be done? There has to be a law that will be the court. The law that established the court needs to be amended, and a body set up. The primary duty of that body is the enforcement of judgments against the countries that are bound by the judgment of that court. We recall in years that there used to be a force called ECOMOG. It was set up, it was a military force that was used to combat insurrection and all that. Now, a body could be set up, maybe the sheriff or whatever name that may be called of the ECOWAS court, that will be empowered by the law to ensure compliance with the judgments of that court. And what that means is that the member nations will need to contribute money to establish this body, and the members will compose of persons from the member nations, and then their duties will be enforcement of the judgments and orders of the Ecowas court, so that it will not be like a court that can only back but not bite. It has done wonderfully well in terms of judgments in cases where individuals or group of persons have been victimized, or the government has gone outside the purview of international best practices and have denied people their fundamental rights. That court has done very well, commendably, but it has need to set up a body to ensure complete. Because if the judgment against Nigeria, for example, you don't expect the government to mobilize forces from Nigeria to enforce judgment against the same Nigeria.
Okay. All right. So, Barrister Bana, the issue of who has jurisdiction to approach this Ecowas court in the first place? Can anybody just wake up as I am now? Can I approach the Ecowas court against violation of my fundamental right by Nigeria?
Very well. You see, the issue of jurisdiction, the court, it depends on what the court was established for. From the act that established the court, it is the community, it's a community court that has jurisdiction to determine issues concerning the various states in the nation, or various nations, various countries, one country or the other, or violation of rights of individuals in that nation. So if a particular person's right, like in some of the cases decided by Ecowas court, if a particular person's rights are encroached upon or violated, as it were, the person can approach the Ecowas court. Alternatively, instead of approaching, if he discovers that his probably security is in danger in going to court in Nigeria here, he can go to Ecowas court. There are cases that people approach the court, and the court rule against the violation of their fundamental human rights in Nigeria here. And there was this case of the act that the act of defamation that the government was trying to criminalize defamation in Nigeria, and somebody took up the case to the Ecowas court, and the Ecowas court struck it down. I said it was wrong for Nigeria to criminalize defamation. Defamation is a civil action. If I defame you, you simply go to court and claim damages against me, not to arrest me and push me.
Yeah, but we'll still see people being arrested. Of course, the issue of daily firearms may still ring.
That is one of the things that we are saying about the enforcement. Because even in the Nigerian courts, if somebody approaches any of the Nigerian courts, that is a court of law. Because we have seen so many things concerning our court today. We have now been able to divide them into courts and the court of law. So that if somebody tells you go to court, you know what the ban means. When you go to court of law, the court of law will do the right thing and will adjudicate on what the law says concerning the issue. You understand? And so the issue of jurisdiction is as established by the law setting up the Ecowas court, and say the mandate is to ensure that observance of law and the principles of equity in interpretation and application of the provisions of the revised treaty of international law in the different states, in the different countries, and that is one of them. Say the court examines the cases of failure by member states to honor their obligations under the community law. One of the things that one of the cardinal jurisdictional issues that the Ecowas court has. Then I want to also chip in here that we can use the foreign enforcement, judgment enforcement rules to actually enforce the Ecowas judgment, because it's as it were, even if it sits in Nigeria, it's not a Nigerian court, and so we can describe it as a foreign court. If it gives judgment, you bring it to Nigeria and then go to any of the high court and register it. Once you register it and the court pronounces on it as if it is the judgment of that court can now enforce it. But the challenge we have is that if it is, because majority of the decisions of the Ecowas court would be against the government. If it is against the government, it becomes difficult.
Yeah, if it's against government, why should it be difficult? Even Nigerian court gives judgment against the government. So why should it be difficult for it to be enforced?
That is what I'm saying, because of the enforcement procedure.
Yeah, the enforcement
you are going to take it through the police and all the agencies that are supposed to assist.
So that's what I'm saying. Why do you think it should be difficult? Because even Nigerian court give judgments against the government, and it's still the same police that enforces that judgment. So if you can use this foreign enforcement procedure, you register in court, and so why should it be difficult?
What I'm saying is that if it is a Nigerian government, I mean a Nigerian court, I mean the judgment of any of the Nigerian courts,
yes,
it is easier to enforce it against the government, and also very difficult to. Easier in the sense that you can tackle it from the angle of going after the account of the agency or the government that is involved. That is why in so many of the garnishee proceedings, when they envisage that you are going to attach the account of the government because of the deliberate refusal of the government to do to obey the court judgment, they now say that you have to seek the consent of the Attorney General before you are able to enforce that judgment, which of course several, even the Supreme Court has said that it is not in all cases that involve even the federal parastatals that you need to see their consent. Enforcement of judgment against the government is difficult in Nigeria, not to talk of enforcement of a foreign judgment on the government.
All right.
Well, the issue is, can we really say that the ECOWAS judgments of the ECOWAS court are really foreign judgments? Because that court was established by the countries that make up what was then known as ECOWAS. They are signatories to it. So Nigeria established that court with other countries. And to that extent, can we really say that is judgment that is foreign? Because one of the major challenges in terms of the judgment of ECOWAS is lack of mechanism. Of course, judgments from other countries are foreign judgments, but Nigeria with other countries came up with laws and established a court that would take charge, determine matters where any of the countries concerned has gone outside the provisions of the treaties and charters that they are signatory to. Can we really rightly say it's foreign judgment? I don't think so. It's not foreign judgment. Because it's a court that Nigeria established with other countries. And I still believe that what needs to be done is to set up a body to ensure the enforcement of the judgments, particularly as the judgment that court in most cases against governments. Okay. There was a matter that Femi Falana and another filed against the government of Benin and got judgment and so on. So, but most times the issue of enforcement has been there.
Yes, because we're almost out of time. Let me just take this question because we're almost out of time. So, by Mike have said that individuals can approach the court.
Of course, yes.
Yes, in enforcing their fundamental rights.
Yes.
So the question would be, how can an individual approach the court, and what is the hierarchy, of this ECOWAS court with Nigerian courts? Right? Is it an appellate? Is it as an appellate court?
No. It's not an appellate court. It's a court of first instance. And then what is there that when individuals approach the court, usually they will now ask whether the person has exhausted the local domestic remedies available. For example, somebody who is claiming that his fundamental rights have been breached, they want to know whether the person approached the high court in the place where the alleged infraction took place and sought remedy there. And if the person made attempt to get justice and failed, of course the court will adjudicate on it. It's not an appellate court. It's a court that an individual can approach. And in the case of the person who was incarcerated for years without trial, he tried to get released through Nigerian courts, and that hit the brick wall. And then at the ECOWAS court, he got his remedy. He was released.
I also think that what we need actually is judgment enforcement procedure rules for the ECOWAS court, so that any country that is a member of that of ECOWAS will be able to enforce the judgment directly once it is delivered. The country has a duty to enforce that judgment as if it is delivered by the court of the land. Once we have that judgment enforcement procedure, we will take care of that latter.
Yes, right. The challenge I see there, I don't know whether out of time, is that if the judgment against Nigeria, now will there be the intention and the obligation to enforce it by Nigerians? But when you have a body that is composed of both Nigerians and non-Nigerians, people from Ghana, Niger and other countries, the ECOWAS countries come together to enforce it, it will be more possible to enforce it than leaving it to Nigeria. Judgment against Nigeria. If you bring it up, they will ask you what is your own.
Right. So, Barrister Akuma, let's take the final word.
Yes, I think it is important for those that are in charge of this court to set up a mechanism that this judgments can be enforced effectively in all the West African countries, so that if somebody approaches the court and is able to obtain judgment, it will not just be an empty judgment. It will be a judgment that he can enforce, and then his rights are protected.
All right. Thank you very much for gracing the show.
Yes, for press freedom, it is high time the press is liberated, and then ECOWAS court needs mechanism and a body to enforce its judgment.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much for gracing the show.